Welcome to the Asha Sharma podcast. Today we got Noura on, a good friend of mine, Noura, who's knows a lot about a lot of different things, really. Noura, tech, women in tech, sustainability. There's a lot of different things that you have, and plus you got like a technical background. You have like a business side. You got a lot of different things going for you. So I'm really curious about a lot of different things that I want to ask you. So thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it a lot.
Thanks, Ashaya. That's very exciting.
Awesome. So why don't you introduce yourself first?
Yeah, so my background is in computer science and sustainability, and not too far ago, I was top 25 under 25 in fintech, and now I'm working with clean tech startup, and I've been in the startup environment since I was in high school. It's a crazy ride. And yeah, now I'm working with a clean tech and involved with a few venture VCs.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. And so what is sustainability to you?
Sustainability is such a big word, and it could be a buzzword a lot. For me, it's something that's long term. It's something that's, fixing a problem that we have from the core, not just like a band-aid solution. So it could be anything. It could be a startup. It could be like operational in your process or in your daily life. Business and lifestyle are not too far apart. But it's the impact from the core. That's sustainability for me. That's for the long term that we can give off to the next generation.
Awesome. Yeah, because one of the things that kind of irks me about sustainability these days is everybody says they're sustainable. Everybody says, okay, I'm a B Corp, I'm sustainable. But how do you know and differentiate between the ones who are maybe really sustainable and ones who are just, faking it?
Yeah, it's very annoying, actually. That's a very good question. And I think people are overusing sustainability just because there's a lot of funding going on right now, climate finance on a government level, or VCs with ESGs that they're trying to meet, and more on the green financing. So whenever there's financing or funding in a certain area, you find all the people are going this way, and then it becomes a hype and then goes away. But that's not what we want, right? So if you really want to assess how sustainable something is, there are various reporting tools that are
Could you name some of them?
Industry standard that are being used, and VCs use them. It depends if you're reporting to a government, if you're reporting to raise fund with a VC that's climate focused. So it depends on your operations, whether you are heavy on operation FMCG, or you're depends on the type of industry you're in. So if you want to assess, I would say we look at the reporting tools. We'll look at what's the best fit reporting tool for each type of industry. And as well, look at the impact of the operation. Your reporting could be great, but how much of an impact you're doing it, right? There's a lot of people who are doing recycling, and great. We are diverting some products from going to landfill. But if you look at it, you have to hire people. You have to send them to collect the garbage, and then you have to do a lot of stuff in the middle. And at the end of the day, we ask ourselves, was it really worth it? Or is there something else that we can put all our effort and money in that can have a higher impact? So this is, I look at high impact. It's okay that we put in more money for R&D. It's okay we put in more effort. I know we are on a crunch of a time when it comes to the climate, and there's goals we have to meet for 2030 and goals we have to meet for 2050, and actually we're very behind. But we can't do band-aid solutions.
Exactly.
We can't waste resources. It will hurt us after a few years, and it will be worse. Right now we're doing just okay, so let's lay a strong foundation, invest in good R&D, and then go from there.
That's awesome. And really, one of the things you brought up, something that bewildered me recently, is you had all the garbage collection guys are on strike, the cardboard collection ones. And I was curious why, and it actually turns out because a lot of these apartment buildings are being flooded with Amazon boxes. So Like while it's like, oh yeah, we're recycling the packages. If there's that much volume, how much net output is that recycling actually contributing to, real being reused again?
Yeah. No, recycling has a lot of issues. Like it's not just that you have a material that you need to recycle, but also how far it's recycled. Like it has a second life, and then what happens? You know what I mean? So a lot of companies use like greenwashing that, this is recyclable and it can have a second life or whatnot. And then you look at the whole operation and it's not really recyclable. It's not sustainable. This strike is interesting.
Yeah.
It means that what we're working on right now, or the thinking going on right now, is not the right direction. It's not feasible. People want the convenience of Amazon. They want the convenience of an e-commerce, all-in-one, ship to home, and whatnot. But the packaging, it's huge. It's a huge waste, and it ends up at landfill at some point, even if it's reused. It's a huge waste. I like the ideas that going on with some companies that they do shared containers or shared packaging. There is a startup that's working on having stations where containers can be reused or shared packaging. So I like this mentality, because you don't get to use material that's not gonna have much of a life. And it's also more sustainable in the long term. Like there's gonna be more people and there's gonna be more consumers, and it's not ending by us being like, okay, I'm not taking a plastic bag from the grocery store, which I go to some grocery stores and I see people are like, fighting with customer service, like, hey, I didn't bring a bag today. I need a bag. There's no plastic bag.
And for context for everybody, there's a plastic bag ban in Vancouver and a lot of places.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a good thing, and I support it. But yeah, we need to keep in mind that behavioral change is going to take time if we want people to consume less and produce more. But while we're thinking about that behavioral change, we need to think about let's deal with the case as it is.
Right. No, that's a great point. What do you think are some things that an individual can do, like on an individual level, to be more sustainable?
Yeah. Sustainability, let's start with the idea that sustainability is everyone's responsibility. I don't like the blame or shame that comes with sustainability on the individual
blaming government
level.
or enterprise.
Or the individual as well, right?
Yeah.
Like it will be like, it's because you guys are using a lot of plastic or eating a lot of meat. There are stats out there about which industries are the most polluting, which countries are the most polluting. So I like to take the blame and shame away from the third world countries, from a lot of individuals who by nature they are low income or can't afford their daily living, and by nature sustainability is not in their top 10 list of things, So let's start with that, because all the conversation that goes on in sustainability is focused on what the individual can do, and grow your own plants, be vegetarian, eat less meat, consume less. All these stuff are good, but holistically there are industries that are the most contributing. If people want to even push the idea of sustainability further, I would encourage everyone to get into sustainability research and development and do something in the space. From an innovation point of view, I'm pro-innovation. I've been in the startup world for most of my adult life. So I encourage everyone to innovate in the space. It's more sustainable. And while we're doing that, if you have the means and if you have the ability, just look at your transportation, look at what is the things you consume the most. For us as individuals, it's also good that we become more of producers and creators than consumers. Like, why am I here on the podcast today? Because I spent too much time on social media and I've become a consumer of social media. So I was like, okay, Ashaya, let's try to create something here. So
awesome.
I am pro creation and pro being producers rather than just consumers.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, and to that note, one thing that I did recently, I realized that I spend about $35 a month, and that's like, 50, 60 different aluminum bottles for sparkling water, which I'm not proud of, like bubbly or like LaCroix. So instead, I went out and I calculated, and I got a soda stream, so that I could at least, take that part of someone has to bring an aluminum container, put it into your house, then you use it maybe for like a couple of minutes. Then after you do that, really you throw it out. It ends up in recycling. It gets transported. When all of that is actually just waste that you could save. And I know there's other tools, like there's a lot of the coffee companies, even the cartridges. That's a space that does need to be innovated on. But Canna is a company I know that's coming out there. Is trying to do one net beverage kind of production system for a bunch of different beverages. So different things like that. I think there's a lot of different areas of innovation, not necessarily always like, sustainable fashion, sustainable makeup, sustainable, like there's like these ones you hear all the time, like sustainable food or restaurant, but there are other niches too that you can go into for innovation, I think.
Yeah, this is better solutions. It's not the best.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So
I need to get better.
It's better, but you need to look at the life cycle of all of these like new things coming up, right? So it's totally better than single-use plastic or single-use bottles, but also looking at the life cycle, I don't see that as the most efficient solution. But good on you for switching to the soda stream. I personally got into the sparkling water consumption recently.
That's good. One thing, there's been a real paradigm shift during the pandemic and the recession with regards to people's mentality towards sustainability. I mean, before that, it was like, oh yeah, that was like the prior core, and people were kind of leeching onto the tech bubble. But during the pandemic, I saw a lot of, clean tech things a little bit disappear. A lot of things that were, catering towards sustainability. You saw some things that had previously had bamboo or non-plastic straws, bring back plastic straws. What do you think happened during the pandemic, and why the cause of this paradigm shift?
That's a very good and tricky question.
That's what I'm here to do, right? So.
I hope no one gets upset, but yeah, I agree with you. There was a shift during the pandemic, and if you look at it with any crisis, you have to look at the core. So if like VCs or investors, they were looking at the core that's going to be profitable. There was a lot of shift for health tech. There was a lot of shift, like, looking at pandemics and how we can prevent another COVID in the future and whatnot. So with crisis, we look at the core, and the core during the pandemic was two things. It was how we can make money, because people were afraid that are we going in a huge recession? What's happening? Industries are not making money. So money was the main thing people were looking at and investors were looking at. And then you have the other side, which is you have a disease, you have a pandemic that's going on. So there was a look at the innovation in health tech and the research and development in health. With the nature of these two things, there was not as much focus on sustainability or funding going into sustainability or projects. But that's actually at the very beginning of the pandemic, which I understand. You have a lot of anxiety during this time. Like everyone's like, what's going on? Like March 2020, it was life-changing, and I appreciate as harsh as it is of an experience, and how some people lost, dear ones, but I found this to be a very good experience for us to learn from. And I learned that, like you said, there was a shift away from a focus on sustainability ventures or sustainability projects. Even unfortunately, there was also a lack of focus on like the diversity and the funding that was going for like diversity. And
can you elaborate more on that? How that happened?
Well, that's also tricky. But yeah, so there was in terms of like the funding, for example, that was available from like government or investors. A lot of the funding had to shift away for for COVID, and yeah, previously there was funding for Black entrepreneurs or women in tech, or more inclusivity. That's part of the ESG, right? The environment, social, and governance. Yeah, that shifted away, and we didn't see all of this funding at the beginning. It's sort of tricky that I wonder now whether the people who are offering this funding actually believe in it, or they had to to go with the flow of where was the funding streams coming from, right? So it brings a question for me. I don't have the answer for it, but I wonder if there's financial products and facilities that were available for inclusivity, and the cherry on top if it's a woman in tech or
the hypocrisy in that space is real. One of the things people don't realize about VCs is VCs are not playing with their own money, right? It's moral hazard. You're putting in like 10%, but these VCs are raising funds from other people, and then they just want to maximize returns. And there's lots of games being played on that end.
I have seen a lot being a woman. It has been hard. So being a woman in tech, please. And then woman in clean tech, sometimes the woman word can be used, or I really get upset about initiatives that are trying to support women, and they mainly provide just like mentorship and general support. But if you really want to support women, you have to provide funding. You have to provide what makes this support actionable, right? So like women in tech, let's not use it as a buzzword. Let's actually support women by providing them the right funding, by making sure they are included in the leadership in the space, and not just used as as a diversity hire, or using the woman for to get that inclusivity funding or whatnot. Let's make sure that they are actually vital to the operation of the businesses that are claiming to be inclusive, that they are in leadership roles, and if they are entrepreneurs, mentorship is great. I appreciate everyone doing effort in the space, but let's push beyond that. It's 2022 and soon 2023. Let's push beyond that, because looking at the stats, you want to look at the end results, right? At the end, I want to make sure what we're putting in is what we're getting out of this. There's a lot of resources going in. I think it can be better. These resources can be utilized in a better way, and the results don't reflect the effort that's being put in, then we are doing something wrong. We need to do something different. We need to go beyond mentorship. We need to go beyond women groups that are just meeting up and connecting and networking. We need to go to action. Let's actually connect to where the funding is. Let's actually connect to where the customers are. We need to get to action.
Right. Well said. Well said. And I think that applies not just to women in tech, but even other minority groups, really any underrepresented groups. You have a similar kind of mindset, I feel. And yeah, definitely that has to be corrected from the top down. Sweet. So going back to Noura, to sustainability, one of the things that has been trending recently, and I don't know if you've seen this, is the idea of sustainable programming languages. So there's a chart released on how much power efficiency each programming language has. So you have like C, very efficient at the top, and then you have Python, and then at the bottom being garbage, and then you have a couple of other ones that are, that you'd see in the middle. I, for one, know that there's a company out there, a large company to be unnamed, that is using 15,000 more PCs than they need on their servers because of their choice of language. So is that something you've heard about? And why do you think that's important to maybe be a more sustainable programmer?
That's a very interesting question. I have seen that in the blockchain space as well, especially with the new ETH merge and how it's becoming more efficient there. So yeah, there is like a lot of talk about sustainability in programming languages and in blockchain. When it comes to programming languages. I think this only applies on the like large scale, like you said, this like large company, which I know of. We'll keep it unnamed. It applies to large companies. Like it doesn't apply if you're a small company or a personal level. I don't see that as a huge change. If we're really looking at the change there, we're looking at the renewable energy that's used to power our servers. So I wouldn't look at it as it's again, it's the same idea as looking as individual change and how much it can contribute if someone like lowers their plastic versus not. It does make a change, but I would look at the power supply for that. And the other news I'm really excited about is the ETH merge, because it's becoming more optimized and blockchain uses a lot of power. And I have been in a couple of conferences that were talking about how unsustainable blockchain is, and some people were just against the idea of blockchain because of the power consumption. But what we're seeing from renewable energy and people doing ideas and startup, like I know someone who is automating carbon credits via blockchain system, and they are doing that with renewable energy supply. So that's like an amazing example of how you can turn things around and make it more sustainable.
Yeah, and I think blockchain does get a bad rap in this space. Like, okay, it's using a lot of space, but in order to make something more efficient, you have to make it first, right? Build it better, build it more efficiently, and then build it faster. So yeah, people don't really follow this. I think, and this is an aside, but I think there are a lot of interesting uses of blockchain technology. As you mentioned, the ETH merge, which recently happened.
Yeah.
That's a good, really good, better case for why we should use blockchain technologies. But that being said, we do have to be wary of throwing blockchain at every solution just because it's blockchain, or like Web3 for X, Web3 for Y, before really understanding the true nature of, okay, is this a better solution? So if you go back and keep focusing on, a better product versus a better technology, I think you end up with a lot of winners in Web3 that you'll see.
That's true. That's the startup mentality, right? Yeah. And that's about being like results oriented and impact oriented. Like you wanna focus on what is the impact and the results you want to see, and then you reverse engineer that, through figuring out what's the product, and then you figure out the technology. So I totally agree with you, and I totally agree with the mentality that, not everything we're going to do right now is going to be optimized and efficient, but let's do it, and let's do it fast, and let's progress from there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So with that note, there's a lot of hindrance to a lot of people in order to kind of, go in the startup space, especially here in Canada, a lot more accessibility in the States. But I know that sometimes I call you the grant queen because you know all about grants. Yeah. What are some of the common grants that startups can use here to get funding if they're early stage, don't have much funding to begin with, and maybe what are some of the kind of less known gem grants that people might not have heard about?
It depends on what stage. Like if it's your just idea stage, or you have an MVP, or the industry you're in. So let's start with that, sure. And then. There are up and coming like startups and companies in the space that also are gathering information about the funding and the grants available. But I would say there are, like, if you are in Vancouver, or actually like generally in Canada, there are accelerators right now that offer money just to start out. If you are under 25, you might. I personally was part of that accelerator. League of Innovators is very supportive in Vancouver, and you will look at these accelerators. There is funding for research and development from the government. There is a huge focus on innovation. The government Innovate Canada posts challenges. So if you have a solution, subscribe to Innovate Canada, and you'll be able to see like the challenges, and then they have requests for proposals, and their funding goes up in millions. There's also the sustainable tech funding. They provide provide funding that matches an investor that invested in you. So sort of you need to have some sort of credibility right there and a previous investment. If you are into the like the satellite space or the space, if you are in the space, there is a lot of focus right now from the government on funding research groups. You don't need to have even an MVP or anything. If you just if you have a research, you would be able to get funding. Besides that, I don't think, like, if you're starting out, I generally don't think don't have the mentality that money is the issue. I think you just have to have the roadmap, you have to have the vision, you have to figure out the resources, and you bootstrap as much as you want and then get that funding and assistance. And there is a lot of grants in this space. If you are in the green building space, there is a lot of grant going on right now for the next 5 years. And funding for the next 5 years for reducing the greenhouse gas emissions from buildings. So start out, have the plan, have the vision. If you have a very solid research and development project, reach out to something like Enercan if you're in the natural resources space, or Innovate Canada, and they are always at the trade shows on conferences happening like in Vancouver or Ontario or Alberta. So definitely reach out. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of money. Money should not be the first thinking. Focus on the doing. Focus on what's your plan and what's your startup, and go from there.
Love it. That was incredible advice. I think everyone should, look in the space, should, listen to that blurb. We'll clip it for them. Yeah. Awesome. One other thing, Noura, I did want to touch on with you is the concept of being sustainable in a group versus sustainable, outside of your group, right? So some people do, things that are maybe sustainable for themselves in their own groups, in their own communities, and then they go outside and then they don't. So there's like a mismatch there between what they maybe believe in versus what they do. Have you seen this, and how can people make sure that they're sustainable across the board?
Do you mean like people just going with the flow in a certain area, or like startups doing that?
Mostly I mean in the startup space. Like if your startup might be sustainable, but you personally are not embodying, characteristics of a sustainable person.
Oh. Okay, I see what you mean.
I'm not referring to you, by the way. No, you're a pretty sustainable person.
I see what you mean. So if you are not, practicing what you preach, then you really need to self-reflect, regardless of what you're doing. For people who are building a sustainability product or a startup, they could be passionate about. They could be, they found an opportunity there that they can do something more sustainable. But if you understand the science of sustainability, or if you understand environmental science, by nature you'll find yourself acting in a more sustainable way. So if you're not practicing what you preach, then you don't really understand what you're doing. And I think that's something that people have to reflect on. Generally, if someone has been like, in tech for too long, you'll find them like doing like cracking tech jokes, or
the bro culture is very alive, right?
Sometimes I text my friends in code and just so it's if you're not practicing what you preach, then you're not good at it.
Sweet. So here's a question. So what would you give as advice to an 18-year-old Noura, or like a 20-year-old Noura, if you were to give advice now?
Oh my God. Oof. I actually thought about it before, and I realized, like, because I was too passionate about startups, there is a lot of noise in the space, and there's a lot of distraction by providing, again, resources and things that don't help, not gonna make you a unicorn. Okay, you can build an app, get 2-3 customers, die after 3 years. I don't know, but it's not that big of an impact. So when I am younger, if I was younger, I would tell myself that actually focus on building my science foundation. If you are, whatever you are studying, if it's not like, if it's more of a STEM major, focus on that, because that's what you need to build on afterwards. If you are like passionate and driven by startups and whatnot, you have a life to live. You have years to come. So I think I was in that mentality of the being rushed, or oh hey, there's an opportunity in this space, let's do it, let's try to get this opportunity. But it doesn't work that way. The opportunity would come when you are ready, and when you are ready, that will open a lot of opportunities for you. So my advice would be focus on the science, focus on the foundation. Even if you have a startup, one day it can fail. You have a competitor that comes up and takes all your employees. Nothing is guaranteed in this world but you. So you really have to have your skill. You have to equip your skill, and you have to have the right people around you. So focus on building that support system. Invest in people. I was too invested into the startup environment. Maybe an advice would be that I should invest in people who I can go and talk to about the simplest stuff that you can't ask a mentor. You need that mentorship from close friends and family, right? So my advice to anyone who is passionate or trying to explore themselves or whatnot, first of all, you need to try things at young age. So don't fear exploring and trying different things. Build your skill and foundation that people would be, Ashaya is the go-to guy if I want to build this. So, and build the right people around you that one time when you're ready, they will be your team and they will be your support system. It doesn't have to happen now. It can happen in 10 years, 20 years. Life is not as social media shows us that,
definitely not.
We have to be happy and rich and pretty right now. We can take our time to build stuff. So take it easy, guys.
Nice. And so that's actually a great note, but one last question for you, Noura, is do you have any questions for me that you want to ask?
Yeah, maybe like I would say share with people why you're doing this podcast and why, like, how you're trying to keep it real, and what's the result or the impact you're looking for.
That's a great question. The main thing I realized is I know a lot of very interesting people like yourself, like a couple of other people I've had on the podcast. And generally, I do like to learn from them. So this podcast was an outlet for me to be able to, have a conversation and share that conversation, because a lot of conversations, that we've had maybe are really great for just us to have, but it's also better if other people can have them. At the same time, I do want the ability to, have content for myself as well, because we do live in a world that is filled with content, and content is a very important aspect of both your visibility and ultimately your ability to kind of reach people. So I wanted to be able to make sure I had some content. And the other thing is, so we built this great studio here in our office in Honeycomb Studio. And we wanted to make use of it. It's a hobby I found now as well, so I enjoy it. And that's another reason I do it. So yeah, I guess those three are probably the core ones.
That's amazing. And that's inspiring for other guys watching you as well, that they learn more about the people in the space, and they learn more about your journey. And there you are, you're seeing someone starting out, you're watching the content, and you're seeing their journey, and that's very inspiring.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Noura. This was a great talk. I really appreciate you coming on again, and yeah, I think you really dropped some gems there. I'm going to have to go back and take some notes and learn a lot of this stuff. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Ashaya. So glad to be on your podcast.
Thank you.